Hello, I'm Trevor, and in this video I'm going to be talking about drawing circles. Now, in the few videos that I've uploaded to YouTube, the biggest question I get from viewers is, where can you buy one of these? Well, this is not something you can buy. This is just a simple shop-made ruler. I initially started making these to put against my lumber cart or my lumber rack so that when I pulled out a piece of lumber, I could put it up against the ruler to get a rough dimension for the size of stock. One day I needed to draw a really large circle, so I just took one of these shop-made rulers and I drilled a hole at the point at which I wanted my radius to be, and I used it as a beam compass to draw my circle. Ever since then, I've been using this as a beam compass, and I simply just drill a hole at whatever radius I need for my circle, and then I use that to draw my circle. This shop-based ruler is really easy to make. This is essentially just a thin strip off the side of a 2x4. So for example, you could take a scrap piece of 2x4 and then just rip off a thin strip off the edge to make the ruler. The ruler measurements can then be printed on a laser printer and then transferred to the thin strip using Mod Podge, which is a standard method for transferring laser prints to a piece of wood. Now, this is not the same method as the Steve Ramsey method, so I'm not sure how well an inkjet printout would work, but I use laser printouts to get a little bit of extra accuracy. Although these are not 100% accurate, but I do use them just as a way of getting a rough dimension. For drawing smaller circles, I still use my geometry compass that I used in school. Believe it or not, this compass is over 35 years old and I still use it regularly today. If you do not have a compass like this, you can make one, and this particular design comes from another YouTube user, Noho91. He doesn't have a video on how to construct it, but if you have a look on his website, he has a collection of compasses that he has built. I saw this particular one which I liked a lot, so I drew a pattern in Illustrator and I built one. This particular design comes from Asif Weinbroom, and you can check his website for more information on this. There's no build instructions, so this one is kind of reversed engineered. The design on his website uses a wooden thread, but I managed to construct this just using a 1/4 inch threaded rod. And the way it works is fairly easy but sophisticated. Your pencil enters into the slot, and then the slot attaches to the body and is tightened by another knob at the reverse side of the body. As the knob is tightened, that pulls the pencil up against the compass body and actually holds it in place. If you're interested to know how I built these two compasses, then I'll have a short video describing the build process so that you can get more information and perhaps build one of these yourselves. Another option for small circles is John Heisz's small circle compass. I found the design pretty awkward to use as it would always tipple over at the pivot point. I did make a couple of prototypes of these, and in this one I did make a longer arm to try and steady the compass with one finger as you drew your circle. Overall, the compass works fine. The extended arm works marginally better, so it's not really worthwhile making that. But in this particular prototype, I used a fast cap double-sided nail, and that helps in that you don't have to bend a nail over and then glue that in position. This double-sided nail slots into the hole and then you can just cut the top off. In terms of beam compasses, there are many designs out there, and this particular one comes again from YouTube user Noho91. Again, there's no build process for this, but it's very easy to make. You can make this from a piece of scrap material. It's essentially two pieces of wood that are cut and shaped and have holes drilled in the appropriate places for all the bits and pieces. In my particular version, I have drilled a 1/4 inch hole, and that allows me to use a 1/4 inch dowel as the beam. In the Noho 91 video, he drills a hole the size of a pencil, and then he calls this his pencil compass so that he can attach the two ends to a pencil and the pencil acts as his beam. I find that the dimension of pencils all vary, and it's very difficult to get one that's going to fit snugly. So in my case, I've used a 1/4 inch dowel, and I made a special cherry one to go in with the cherry scrap material that I used to construct this compass. This is the John Heisz beam compass, and of all the beam compasses that I made, this particular one is by far the easiest to make. May not be the quickest to make because it has a glue up, but it is by far the easiest one to make. You essentially just need to rip two pieces of 1/4 inch material, glue them up, and drill a hole for the pencil. That's it. The pivot point is a piece of 1/4 inch threaded rod that has been sharpened on one end, and I made a cap for the other end to finish it off. This compass works extremely well, and you can make it as long or as short as you want. In a similar vein, this is the Matthias Wandel design, and he doesn't have a plan or any measurements for his beam compass, but if you watch his video on YouTube or you look on his website, there is sufficient information to make one of these yourself. And I'd say of all the beam compasses I've made, this is probably the most difficult to make. In fact, I had to make a prototype of this first to figure out all those angles and measurements before I could actually make one. This is definitely the most over-engineered beam compass there is out there, and the only reason you'd make this is if you really want a challenging build. This compass does share a common design feature with the Asif Weinbroom compass in how the pencil is held in place. In this case, as the pencil holder is tightened, the pencil is pulled up tight against the beam, effectively clamping it in place. This is the Steve Ramsey beam compass, and I made this one to pretty much compare to the other ones that I had built. The only difference in construction is that I used a router table and a dovetail router bit to cut the sliding dovetail slot and the beam, but pretty much the rest of the construction is all pretty similar. I made one small modification in that I cut a small piece of the sliding arm off and glued it on the end where I drilled the hole for the pencil. It's not necessary, but I thought it finished it off a little better. This is actually a pretty good design, and you can use it to draw small circles as well as large circles, and of course you can make this arm as long or as short as possible as well, which also affects the size circle that you can draw. In addition to the beam compasses from other YouTubers, I did also construct this particular beam compass which I found in Shopnotes Issue 17. I did start making this beam compass exactly as it was in the plans, but after I had made it, I actually found that I could actually optimize this a little better. The original design calls for a sliding dovetail track down the complete length of the compass. However, that is not needed since the head can only travel between 2 and 3 inches. I therefore decided to cut the sliding dovetail track off the beam and add another fold-out arm on top to extend the total length of the arm. After I made that modification, I just wished I had maybe thought out the actual sliding arm mechanism in a little bit more detail. It's not critical. Where I drilled the holes for the folding arm actually now offsets the pivot points by 1 inch after the fold out, as opposed to retaining that 2-inch pivot point mark along the entire length of the compass. In addition to the beam compass in Shopnotes 17, there are 2 additional designs in Shopnotes magazines you may want to check out. One is in issue 97 and the other is in issue 130. So that's it. There are plenty of options here for drawing circles, and if I had to rate all these beam compasses, I'd probably say the John Heisz beam compass is the easiest and nicest compass to make. If you're looking for a particularly challenging build and one that really feels great, then check out the Matthias Wandel design. This really has the nicest feel and it's really nicely balanced. So this is probably the best beam compass, difficult to make. This is also a good compass, easy to make. So check those two designs out, the best designs by far.